Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of the AfCFTA podcast. Now, we thank you for patronizing this platform. We appreciate the fact that you've been liking all our episodes so far, and you've been enjoying the episodes. So, beginning from season 1, when we talked a lot about the negotiation stages, the state of play of the AfCFTA, the journey as well of the AfCFTA, and then we moved to the second season, and we've been talking in the second season. We've been talking a lot about the meat of the agreement from the AfCFTA Secretariat perspective and the work that's been done by the Secretariat to ensure that you and I, as Africans and those of us trading on the continent of Africa, are able to move goods and services across borders on the continent of Africa. We've talked about trading goods, how goods are able to move, and the work that's been done by the Secretariat in the area of trading in goods to ensure that goods are able to move from one place to the other. We've talked about customs as well, and we've talked about services, how services are moving on the continent of Africa. We continue to delve into the meat of the work that's been done by the Secretariat, and we are pleased that today we have the Directorate other Secretariat that's in charge of coordinating the Secretariat and its partners outside, the regional economic communities, external parties, and all of that Secretariat continue to engage. This is a directorate that deals with all of that coordination and programs. I'm pleased to introduce to all of us Dr. Makong. A lot of people know how busy you get and making time to be here in the studio. We appreciate this opportunity.
No, thank you very much. It's our duty, and it's a great gesture on your part to invite us to be part of this great initiative. So we are very pleased to be here.
Great. Let me take you to where we know you. And where we know you is a busy life at the Secretariat, coordinating and putting together programs on behalf of the AfCFTA Secretariat. When you say the Directorate of Coordination and Programs at the AfCFTA Secretariat, which you direct with obviously the leadership of His Excellency the Secretary General, what does it entail?
It's a very interesting entity within the body of the Secretariat. And the Directorate is about providing services internally as well as providing services externally. We are a service provider to the rest of the Secretariat and our partners. To put it in a way that it could be out there understood, it's more of us being more of a Ministry of Foreign Affairs in terms of how we engage with our external partners, whether it be our mother institution, the African Union, our member states, whether it be engaging with our development partners, our civil society organization, the traders. This is what the core of what we do is all about, and we coordinate all these different activities between the Secretariat and the external world. And of course, internally, we also do play this coordination mandate as well, and this is where I would say we are something akin to the Ministry of Development Planning and the Ministry of Home Affairs.
Yeah.
Because internally now, when it comes to the programs, we have to ensure that the programs of the Secretariat are well aligned and they are well coordinated in terms of how they are curated, the design, no duplications. All of those is part of what we do. And again, making sure that in our function and in our duty to report to the African Union as the entity to which we report and we are accountable to, we ensure that all the submissions of the Secretariat are in line with the standards that have been set for us to meet. And that's what we do.
And that's very interesting and sounds to me very, very intense and also very challenging. Because if I get you clear, you are sitting in between getting the right things that is being done at the Secretariat and the right things that are being done by your partners and putting them together, making sure that they all align and all of that. So as being in charge of the Home Affairs or the Ministry in charge of Home Affairs or Interior and Ministry in charge of planning within the Secretariat and all of that, you make sure that the various directorates that are working together and putting or their works, the meats of the agreement together to allow effective implementation, they align with the overall theme that the AU agenda is also seeking. And then you are able to also get partners who are interested in the same cause also to align accordingly. That sounds very intense.
Quite intense, but it is also interesting. In fact, it's an honor to all of us in the Directorate to be doing this. We have very committed colleagues that I work with, and it's a contribution, it's an opportunity that I would say a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Great. And it's a pride.
It's a pride. And we also know that there are other Africans who could even do better than what we are doing. But again, we've been given the space to contribute and to make sure we serve Mother Africa in this capacity. So it's an amazing, rewarding, I would say, vocation that we're having here.
Yeah. And to what extent do you think that this has been received, and the enormous work that's been done by the Secretariat? And we've had the opportunity to listen to quite a number of the great work that's been done by the various directorates. To what extent is that being received out there by the regional economic communities, on which is more or less described as the foundation or the building blocks of the AfCFTA? To what extent is that the work that's been done also being received by the AU and all other parties, for instance?
Yes. It's a great question. I would say that if I would characterize it this way, it's for the past 4 or 5 years, we've been in the kitchen. And by saying we've been in the kitchen, what I mean is we've been working on the negotiations. And now it's time to get out of the kitchen and serve the meal.
The meal.
Absolutely. And therefore, there has been a great appreciation in terms of what we have achieved, in terms of the Secretariat facilitating and supporting member states in their negotiations and amongst themselves. And therefore, through that level of support we've been providing, this has gone down very well. And again, our heads of states are proud of what has been achieved so far. And of course, the credit we give it to the member states we support, but the credit all goes to the member states. Like I'm saying, now it's time to move out and dish the meal. That's it. But the negotiations, no elsewhere in the world where we've heard negotiations of this scope and magnitude that have been concluded in such a short span of time. Not any external party, the continent, has been able to lead the way for the longest time possible. We've been swallowing and, taking on what others have set out as templates for us. But for the first time, we have, for example, the protocol on women and youth. You'll not find it anywhere else in the world. It's the first of its kind in the world, fully curated by the continent. You have the protocol on digital trade that I'm sure my colleagues will speak to. And again, this is the innovation of the continent. And in several other protocols, there are pro-development provisions and commitments that member states have taken in there. And again, because the AfCFTA is a pro-developmental, let's say, legal instrument. Now, of course, getting to your question now, the point here is that we have proven that the continent can negotiate and come up with legal instruments that reflect the realities of our people.
Yeah.
Now, and of which 95% of the market players in the continent are small and medium enterprises. So we really have a legal instrument that can serve them. But now it's time to get out of the kitchen and then serve the meal. And this is exactly where I would say we are now at the cusp of implementation. We are transitioning as an institution, but the continent as a whole as well, it is transitioning from negotiations to implementation. And for that reason, we had an honor of having the inaugural committee of heads of states and government on the implementation of the AfCFTA set in February. And this particular committee, again at the political level, it's set out to ensure that we move with speed in the path of implementation. So we are out of the kitchen. Our heads of states are supporting us. They're here with us. And indeed, I think with that political momentum and the will of the many people in the Secretariat and our member states, I think I don't know what will stop us. Not even a nuclear threat can stop us.
and that's quite interesting. But I also like the analogy that you present as having this negotiation stage being like the preparatory stage of meals at the kitchen. So you've been able to put all the ingredients together and all of that, and you've even gone ahead to prepare this meal, and you are stepping out just to dish them out. What you are telling the continent now is that everybody can begin to utilize the agreement to begin to trade. Is that the case?
Absolutely. There is an act of serving the meal. There's also an act of eating. So everybody has a role to play. The Secretariat is here to support the member states in a way of serving them, building the capacities and ensuring that the regulatory reforms do take place, and everything that the member states have actually agreed on, we bring it to life. But there's also, it's like tango.
Yeah.
It also means that back in our capitals in the continent, somebody else has to take a certain act. And that's where I'm saying that the meal has been dished, but someone has to pick the fork and knife and start to do the eating.
And who should this be? Who is this? Who should begin to eat what has been prepared by the Secretariat with a huge political will that's been given by the leadership of the continent? Who should begin to eat the meal that's been prepared?
Great question. And there are multiple players in this wedding.
Yeah.
Well, let's say it's
Yeah.
a wedding. There are multiple invitees
Yeah.
that are in this particular wedding. We are having the different ministries, of course. We are having state agencies. We are having the private sector. We are having the civil society organizations. We are having the development partners. All these different players. We are having the DFIs, our own development banks. We are having the financiers, investors. All of these have been invited to the wedding.
Yeah.
And the eating now is going to be a co-joint eating by all of us. So this is a very important part of the story.
Yeah, and we've got over 50 countries that signed to this agreement. Do you get the sense that all these member states are aware of the stage where we've gotten to, with regards to where we all have to begin to grab the cutlery and begin to enjoy the meal that's been served? Are the party states themselves aware of where we've gotten to, and do you see them starting to take initiatives towards getting ready to serve themselves?
That's a very important and good question, and it has to be answered honestly. And myself, I've been in this business for over 20 years, trade negotiations being at the level of the member states. And of course, I've come to this capacity. I went to the academia, taught international trade law, all of that. So it is always not the case that the advocacy, awareness, it is as widespread as one would desire. You'd find that it's a very small community of individuals, maybe institutions, negotiators, even within governments. You could find that perhaps is the ministry, a few ministries, trade, customs. Probably this does not filter down to the people who actually are the ones who are at the operational level to make things work. And that is within government, within the civil society, within the private sector. That means part of the eating will include making sure that we raise awareness across the whole continent. And going back to the analogy, you would be having your fork and knives set out there, and we also have to tell people, do you eat from inside out or inside in? And again, the whole idea about awareness, this is what this is about. The role of the academia, for example, the role of the civil society, the training institutions. What is their role? How do we ensure that we mainstream the AfCFTA into our curricula? This is a continental policy. Now, it means we should have programs, and we do have programs on the way that will target the academia. Our engagement with regional economic communities. We have a platform where the regional economic communities and the AfCFTA Secretariat sit around, and the work that we're doing, we expect that work will filter down to the member states. And again, because we have just now gotten into the stage, the whole wedding is actually happening now. So this is a very important element, and indeed, awareness raising, they cannot be any replacement for it. We need to make sure that it is done at all levels. We have gone to the borders, for example, and I just want to make the audience understand that how huge the mandate is. variety. If you do a stakeholder analysis, there's variety and diversity of stakeholders.
Yeah.
Who is going to go down to the border somewhere in the hinterland of a country to ensure that all these documents we see at the border are translated in the language that they understand, not in English, not in French, but in the language that they understand. That is part of the awareness raising, and the Secretariat has been hands on deck in ensuring that we go all the way down to these borders and make sure that there is indeed impartation of this awareness.
Great. But, Director, here is my concern. The number of people that you have at the Secretariat, or even the number of people that you work with, I'm not sure that they will be able to go to every corner of the continent of Africa, 55 countries across the continent of Africa, to encourage everybody to begin to trade with the agreement that we have, and the food that the Secretariat has prepared, with all the tools and instruments that have been made available for trading to commence, or for trading to take place. But what sort of support do you think party states can begin to give by owning the process of implementation, so that the area of sensitization and awareness creation, they are the ones who are owning, disseminating the information to their private sector and encouraging them to let them know what's been prepared by the Secretariat and all of that? Do you see that going on as effective as it should be, so that the Secretariat would not have to then, send their staff out there, the same staff who have prepared the food, to now go down there to go disseminate the information?
I know that sometimes it's difficult to be the chef and the waitress or the waiter at the same time, but the interesting thing about these trade agreements we are having, and in particular the AfCFTA, is that we have had wealth of experience over time. We, like I said, we engage with our colleagues from REX. They have tools and mechanisms that they're using. Does it mean because we, being a 5-odd-year-old organization, we have to start everything from scratch? I think the answer is no. We have to learn and benchmark and use the best practices at the level of the REX, and then begin to apply them into our own systems. So there are good things that are being done at REX. There's also some of the global best practices from other international organizations that are similarly placed as us. But of course, we need to also come up with some innovations.
Yeah.
Now, within that construct, one of the important things that the member states did agree on is the establishment of the National Implementation Committees as a treaty obligation.
Okay.
Or the equivalent of the National Implementation Committees. That's a game changer, because it ensures that there is ownership at the national level and within the national governance structure. And this is a very important issue, because you have all the relevant ministries, state agencies. You also have the relevant representatives of the private sector, the civil society, making up part of this National Implementation Committees. So what that means is that there is an umbilical cord that has been created between the services that the Secretariat provides as well as the National Implementation Committees. Now, we need to make sure that the food is flowing through this umbilical cord. And of course, the continent and the vast majority of our members, in terms of capacity, you see it. That's why we had the Aid for Trade, framework under the Paris framework, to say we need to make sure that the requisite level of capacity is built in the continent. So most of our members would need that level of support. I'm using the umbilical cord scenario here to say at some point we need to build this capacity up to where the umbilical cord is not needed. Of course, it's not all members who need the umbilical cord, but indeed we are having programs that we are putting together right now, amazing programs, in fact, multi-year programs that we are putting in place, and these programs will ensure that the question of the Secretariat being at the center of everything, it will dissipate over time, because the member states will have that level of capacity
and
that is resident in them, and they'll take ownership. And actually, our member states have taken greater ownership. Every year we go to the assembly, there is an outcome on the AfCFTA Secretariat ever since this organization was created. That means the level of ownership, it is so high on the agenda. It is for this reason that the 38th Assembly of the Heads of States and Government, even the 37th Assembly of Heads of States and Government of the African Union, created this Committee of the Heads of States and Government on the implementation of the AfCFTA. It shows the level of the political appetite we have to ensure that we deliver on the agreement. So I'm very confident, and I feel strongly confident that this is, and as I always put it, if we were to speak of insurance, the only insurance policy that Africa has, economically speaking, it is the AfCFTA.
That's powerful to hear. The more reason I want us to break it down a little bit. If this is the most powerful insurance that the continent has, what difference do you think it can make in the lives of ordinary African? If this is the most powerful insurance that we have ever seen.
It's a very good question, but I want to take a step back. And they say failure to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah.
And our approach has to be structured. We studied Africa's engagement in the multilateral trading system for the past 30 years. Majority of our members are members of the World Trade Organization, multilateral trading system, as we call it, and we are proud of being part of this system because of its benefits. Of course, it's undergoing some significant challenges, but even our heads of state said we need to make sure we ring-fence this system with the WTO at the core. So we really support it. But we also have learned some lessons. And the lesson is, for the past 30 years of our membership, the question is, what had been the level of integration of the continent in the global economy? Today we sit at 3%. That's very low.
Extremely
you can't
low.
take 30 years being part of the system, but then your level of integration is at 3%. And of course, if you remove, from, in terms of trade, the minerals we trade, the oil we trade, all of that, you'd find that probably that number is going to go
extremely negligible.
Exactly. So we have learned some things from that experience, and we are saying we now need to come up with, if you will, a blueprint for the continent. But it's got to be structured. It's got to be structured. It is for this reason that under the leadership of His Excellency, the Secretary General, we now have the AfCFTA strategy. This is a very important tool because it came at the right time immediately after we concluded most of the negotiations. I think 98% almost done, 99% done. Immediately after we concluded the negotiations, we had this particular strategy, which has 4 important pillars. And again, this is what I'm saying, you got to have a plan and to move ahead. You can't just shoot in the dark. And this is what is exciting about where we are going. One of the key pillars we have there is building the implementation capacity. And what we are saying is, what capacity have we been able to amass and build in the past 30 years? And when we look into and we have discussions with our member states, we talk to the civil society, the academia, we find a number of gaps. We find out that when you look at several instruments, whether it be the SPS agreement, the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement, whether it be in the area of trade facilitation, the area of investment, you name them, we've never had a deliberate continent-wide policy reform initiative or program at our member states level in trying to implement some of the commitments undertaken under the WTO. And it's not about compliance. It is being able to implement and curate regulations that can help spur the economic growth of our member states at home. We've never had that. So we are saying under the AfCFTA, we need to make sure that we build the implementation capacity of our member states deliberately. And one of the things that we'll be rolling out, it's a program that will have a focus on what we studied. And again, we did a study, we assessed, and we found out that there are 5 key things that are needed for a state to move ahead. One, we need to build the technical capabilities of our people, the human resources capability. And this is what we have as part of the plan. That's number one. If you have somebody in the Ministry of Agriculture And one of the agreements in the AfCFTA, for example, we have an annex. The lawyers, they call it an annex, but it's really an agreement, just to simplify what this is about, on sanitary and phytosanitary measures. There, if you export, let's say, agricultural products, they have to be tested to make sure that they're fit for consumption by human beings, to make sure that they will not result in environmental degradation, affect plants in other countries. So, but there's got to be testing that is done, and there are standards that need to be met. So the question is, do we have the capabilities, the human resource capabilities, to take those tests? Or do we need to train our people to be able to do that? So we'll have to go through agreement by agreement and build purposefully the capacity of our people in different ministries and state agencies to be able to deliver. That's number one. The second issue about this capacity we're talking about is the administrative capacity. It is not a given that when you have a trade agreement, then somehow a state ministry will somehow by a miracle find itself being efficient. No. It will take us having to go into looking at the administrative laws of a given country within a ministry and ask ourselves, are these particular laws, the processes and the procedures, are they aligned to the commitments? And we need to make sure that we sort that out. And again, we need to build, in this case, the administrative capacity. That's number two. Number three, it is what we call institutional capacity. The relationship between the institutions, because any given trade transaction will involve, of necessity, more than one state ministry or a state institution.
Yeah.
So that means somehow the institutions of the state, they have to work together. But do the mandates at the national level allow even for some of the ministries to work together? Do the mandates allow for the agencies to work together? So we need to go in there, peep through, and then begin to make recommendations, working together with the states, of course, under the National Implementation Committee's framework, to make sure that that capacity is there where the states can actually, I beg your pardon, the ministries and agencies can collaborate. The fourth area is the regulatory capacity. Does the state have the capacity to regulate? The capacity to regulate finds its meaning in the obligations that our member states have taken under the AfCFTA, and therefore what laws need to be reformed, what laws need to be changed, in what way. And again, this has to be pro-developmental. And the last one is the infrastructural capacity. And here we are talking about certain soft infrastructure that needs to be in place, but not only soft infrastructure, there's got to be, of course, the hard infrastructure. We've been told, I think I listened to many of the speeches of His Excellency. He's been quoting a staggering figure to say that the continent needs around $110 billion, over $100 billion annually to close the infrastructural deficit. But we need to identify all of these with purpose. So I'm raising this to say part of the plan is to make sure that we build the state capacity to implement the AfCFTA and to make sure that the relevant measures are in place. The second,
and which you have done. All these plans and all of that have been, strategies have been developed.
The strategies, we have a number of over 30 plus countries have put in place the implementation strategies on the AfCFTA, but we need to take it further now. We need to, and this is part of the implementation plan, and we're working with our members on this. We had last year the committee of the national implementation committees of the AfCFTA. The member states said, yes, this is the right way to go. We need to move in this direction across these 5 areas. And what we're doing, we are not, let's say, a government unto ourselves as a secretariat. What we do, it is always endorsed by the member states. And therefore, we presented this, and the member states said, yes, this is good. This is a departure from what we've been doing for the past 30 years. So this is innovative, and it's gonna be a game changer. And of course, we are engaging with our partners as well to make sure that this actually works. The second issue that you'll find in our plan, and again, I will not elaborate too much as I did with this because it is very important. The second issue is to simplify trade. If you can do all these 5 things, there's going to be simplified trade. For who? Simplified trade for our private sector.
Good.
Simplified trade for our small and medium enterprises.
Good.
Simplified trade for our micro, small and medium enterprises.
Yeah.
Simplified trade for what others call informal or unregistered traders. Very important. And this is recognized within the ecosystem of the AfCFTA. The Secretariat has got to be a strong institution. And I'd like to give you some mind-boggling figures. If you take an organization like the World Trade Organization, it has staff members well over 600 people. In the AfCFTA Secretariat, I want to say that the number is quite conservative. It's really, really down. I don't want to put it out there, but it is really, really, really down. And I think the question that has to be asked, and probably it will be studied in history books, is to say, how did they do it with such a small
number of people?
But also the AfCFTA legal instruments, they create institutions. For example, the Competition Authority. We have the NIC as well at the national level. We need to strengthen these institutions. So there's a secretariat, therefore, has to be very much strengthened to be able to deploy and support the deployment of the three other areas that I mentioned. Because all of those, we are supporting the member states, we are supporting the private sector, we are supporting the civil society. But you need a strong secretariat to do so. Yeah. And of course, we are in discussions with our member states, and there's a great appreciation as to what this actually means for the continent. So this is the fourth part of the pillar in the plan that we're having in our strategic plan, and we believe this is the recipe that can take us very far in the very short space of time.
What I understand again with some of these cross-border trade, for instance, is that the informal traders are quite significant. And you rightly put it that some of our women traders are using the bushes and having to compete with reptiles and all of that just to get away from difficulties, barriers. We could be tariff or non-tariff, that through the formal barriers that they have to use. But if you have a regime in place under the AfCFTA that allows these women to formally go through the system without the difficulties, I believe that should have serious impact on their trading, because we can equally tell that, and people have said it, that if we want to critically look at the trading that's been going on, particularly from the regional communities, it could be more. But it's because we are not recording the informal ones and all of that. So we are not getting the actual even value of trade that's going on down there. How do you think that the simplified regime would change all these dynamics, and some of the plans that you've put in place would change all these dynamics in terms of trading within the regions on the continent?
It's a very important question, and I want to take a step back also on this to say, if we say that, basically we don't say, the facts are such that over 95% of the continental market, it is made up of small and medium enterprises. Mm-hmm. And of course, in there you're having micro, small and medium enterprises. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's also a vast majority of unregistered traders. We need to ask
the informal side of that is very huge.
Exactly. We need to ask ourselves a question. Why would I need to be in the informal sector? Mm. Now, I want to take you back. In my former life, when I was in academia, I used to ask the students to say, tell me in here, who is not engaged in trade in what shape or form? Mm. And this majority of my students, of course, were folks that were already in the job market, government and the private sector. By my count, over 98% of students will actually be involved in some form of trade or not. Yeah. And these are people who have degrees and, master's degrees. They are working, but at the same time, they're informal traders. Yeah. So with all that education, you are still an informal trader somehow. And when you begin to inquire deeply as to why is this the case, they say, but why would I go through the border and then pay high duties? Why would I pay these fees? Why would I join the queue and spend the whole day at the, yet I'm having an item that is worth $10.
And business is time.
And business is time. So they ask very legitimate questions that we need to think about. And I said, we need to take these experiences and plow them back. Yeah. And under the AfCFTA, of course, we have, for example, different instruments. We have the Committee on Women and Youth that recently passed a regulation to be considered by the ministers that can allow to draw on existing systems on simplified trade regimes that allow for women to trade with ease, young people to trade with ease across borders, and make sure that those are also ring-fenced and brought into the ecosystem of the AfCFTA. So we do have that particular possibility. And I want to also say that it's not just the question of rules. Rules can go up to a point. As we speak today, the data tells us that in terms of the deficits when it comes to financing for small and medium enterprises in the continent on an annual basis, it is around $331 billion. And yet at the same time, and this is quite oxymoronic and really more of a paradox, because if you say that the deficit is around $331 billion on an annual basis, and at the same time, we are told that data, we've been informed that in terms of the loans that the women and youth take, because now they cannot go to the bank. They don't have the bank account. They cannot go to a fintech somewhere. They cannot go to a financial institution. Where do they get the loans to run their business? They go to, I think, in East Africa, they call them the Shylocks. They go to the Shylocks. The Shylock is going to take, a premium of between 150 to 300%.
I see.
So where this becomes a paradox is the notion that it means that the so-called unregistered traders, they are willing to take loans.
Yeah.
It means that our financial institutions, if they curate the right incentives and the right packages, there is business there for them.
Yeah.
So we need to also bring them into the fold and talk to our own DFIs. We need to talk to our commercial banks and see how can we resolve this particular issue. And already we are seeing some movement towards this direction. For example, in East Africa, I may not mention names of countries, but in East Africa, we know that today you can have your Momo, your mobile money, the M-Pesa. So within the AfCFTA now, under the pillar that I mentioned on inclusion as well as sustainability, but in this case on inclusion, these are the measures that we are putting in place and working with our partners. So we really, again, we've just started this year, this program of implementation, and we'll be seeing the strategy itself. So you'll be seeing us working with a plethora of different parties and entities that are in this space to make sure that it's not just about rules. It's about impact. It's about how many women have been able to get the loans. How many of them are exporting across borders? We really want to see the actual impact on the ground, the jobs created. All of these, can we have cooperatives? Can we have the cooperatives in such a manner? I'm sure Director Mohammed spoke about the AfCFTA trading companies. Is it possible that we can have all these measures to make sure that there is the aggregation of production and all these different young women and all the young people we have in the continent. Of course, men also can also be able to find their products crossing the border. So we are having a number of partners that we are working with. And again, watch the space. This is something that is in the offing.
Yeah, and it's great that you've talked extensively about the strategy, because it's one that I wanted you to elaborate extensively about. It's also great that you've referred to the impacts that we're expecting and all of that. But I want to find out if within the strategy there's a mechanism to track the impact that is expected of the work that you are putting out there, out of the strategy. Do we have a mechanism to track the impact?
Absolutely. We have a strategy. As you know, a strategy is a tool. And we've had several of these strategies in our professional lives, and it has to be given life. It has to be given effect. How do you give the strategy effect? What we have introduced in the Secretariat is the balanced scorecard approach to implementation of the strategy. That means we are having a system where the Secretariat will not be working on the basis of simple activities here and there. We will be looking into impactful initiatives that will run over a number of years, 5 years. We have a 5-year strategy, so they will be running over 5 years, because in that way you are able to determine for each activity you carry out, it has to be within a framework of a program.
Yeah.
And therefore, of course, we'll have the bigger program at the Secretariat. So that tool will basically help us to see where we are. Now, it's not a tool that is in and of itself something that is going to be somehow shrouded and the Secretariat is hiding. No, it's going to be
open. It's
that
out
is
there.
open. We'll be reporting to our member states on this. Of course, everything that we do has to be endorsed by our member states. So it will go all the way until the assembly, up to the assembly.
But not for the general public. Will it be available to the general public?
Once it is with the member states, it is available
there.
it is out there. It is available to the member states. So this is something, and of course, we're going to have a number of partners, civil society organizations that are part of this. It's not going to be business as usual. This is what I want to say. It is a joint action where we have our partners, just like when we did the negotiations. Every legal instrument, we had to make sure that there are consultations with the civil society, with the private sector, and it's the same thing. When we deploy this, the civil society, the private sector will be part and parcel of this. Even the different elements the capacity levels that I was outlining a moment ago, all of those, it's not going to be something that we just begin to pick from thin air. No, the consultations are ongoing, and we'll make sure that every party that needs to be part of this is well consulted, and it becomes ownership at all levels, not just our member states.
Tell us about where in the strategy do you have the private sector taking immediate ownership of the AfCFTA and driving it? And because that's been, Director, to be honest with you, been the challenge that a lot of the people are talking about, that at what point, because the Secretariat has had a guided trade initiative sometime back in 2022 October thereabout, had a guided trade initiative where a lot of companies were led to begin to trade and all of that.
Now, who is the private sector in Africa? We have to ask ourselves that question. Who is the private sector? If you break down that question into its constituent elements, yes, you have the multinational companies. Do they need the AfCFTA Secretariat for them to figure out what rules of origin apply, what standards apply? Well, I would say to an extent that we give them information, yes, but not to be held hand. They've been doing this, for years. They have firms, legal firms that help them to figure all these things. And the ecosystem is designed with small and medium enterprises in mind, 95% in mind. And therefore, we do have plans, therefore, under the digital trade, for example, protocol, we do have plans to make sure that we activate this movement of goods across borders as well as services. Under the protocol on women and youth, efforts are afoot, the issue of matchmaking as well, of the different markets for our people to know where to sell their products, making sure that the services that are related to all of this are also provided. So that's another issue. Of course, we have a huge program, and I hope you'll be able to have a chat with our colleagues in the private sector. A project on fisheries to make sure that we reach out to the private sector at the bigger level as well as at the lower level. So all of these are there, and we are beginning to have the proofs of concepts. If I would call them that, what my colleague Director Temba is doing there, amazing work. Why? Because we can see that this thing can work. What Director Mohammed did with a guided trade initiative, amazing work. So it means this thing can work. Yes, the private sector can be on its own, and we are moving towards that. But let's remember, we are not North America, we are not Europe. We are in the continent, and there's a lot of capacity that needs to be built amongst our people to make sure that they're able to meet all the standards that are out there in order for them to be part of the AfCFTA ecosystem.
Yeah. In all of these great plans that you've put together, in all of the strategies that you have put together and all of that, in addition to the work that and partnerships and all of that you put in together, are there some tough challenges that you anticipate? And to what extent are you planning to surmount these challenges? Are there glaring challenges that the continent ought to know that indeed we have all these in place? We've done all these works. We're hoping to hit that or that target in the next year or 2 or 3 or maximum 5, of which your strategy is speaking to. But do you anticipate some challenges, and what are they, and to what extent have you worked on them?
I try to the best of my abilities to never talk about problems. Not that they are not there, but the approach is to say, yes, we know that there are challenges, but we speak opportunities and we speak solutions. And as I had said, for example, what is it that we have missed in the past 30 years that has gotten us to only have 3% of the share of global trade? What is it that we missed
along the line?
Now, we need therefore to take a prognostic approach. What is the prognosis to this challenge? And that is why we believe that with the 4 pillars of the strategy that I mentioned, we are able then to cascade the solutions all the way down. Now, I would like to speak about what the Secretariat is currently working on, and of course it touches the 5 capacity elements that I spoke about. We need to make sure that the states, they move and sync with the private sector and the civil society.
In the states.
In the states, exactly. And also we need to ensure that there is synergy between the AfCFTA and the building blocks, and here I'm referring to the
regional
RECs.
economic communities.
Absolutely. We need to ensure that, and we have mechanisms in place to precisely deliver on all of these things.
Good.
Now, one of the things that would be very key is building an incentive system, because if you cannot, and I understand why. I worked for a member state before. I've been a member state, so I've sat in government. I worked for government, and I know for me to go to the Minister of Finance and say, I need money, I don't know, 100 million to implement a trade agreement, I'll be asked questions. Show us the value for money. What impact would be derived out of me giving you $100 million to implement the agreement? So we need to build an incentive structure. And by an incentive structure, I mean we need to ensure that there is visible impact that can be determined before investments are made. That's why we have the feasibility studies in investments. You have to make sure that if I put $1 here, there's going to be $2 more out of it. And in this case, it is for this reason that we'll be launching a program that will be implemented at the level of the national implementation committees, and it will involve the private sector as the use cases. We need to have these use cases. We need to have the proof of concept, and from there we can have large-scale reforms at the level of individual member states and the RECs. So we do have a program that we are putting together with our partners in this particular area, and part of that program would involve building the actual value chains. Part of this program will look into matchmaking and mapping market opportunities for our small-scale traders, but across the continent using the AfCFTA rules. So this is what we are working on and really laser focused on, and we hope, of course, with the great support of our leader here at the AfCFTA Secretariat, His Excellency the Secretary General, will be able to launch something that is meaningful in a few months to come. So we really are looking forward to this, and I just want to say that to our listeners, we really just transitioned from negotiations to implementation in February this year. I know you've been asking, is the AfCFTA working? We did.
That's a very basic question.
That's a very basic question.
As we speak, there are quite a number of those coming up. And
exactly, and we were saying that, look, we had the guided trade initiative just to say it is working before
that's
it was
a proof of concept.
A premature initiative before the agreement can actually be said to be fully implemented. We said, let's test and see if this thing can work, and we saw that actually here and there we learned a few things, but we said this can be fixed, but we know that the agreement can actually work. Now we have to do which is now again do the eating. The food is dished.
Yeah.
It's all before us. Now we need to move in that direction to make sure that all these initiatives that we have and the agreement can indeed avail much.
Great. Now, the one of the things that people also continue to talk about is it sounds that the agreement is quite technical. How do you think that we can make this less complex?
No, thank you very much. The jargon is for us. The jargon is for us and state representatives in esteemed offices, whether it be the Ministry of Agriculture. The jargon is for us. If you talk to a trader, as you rightly said, they only want to know, how do I get my product across the border?
Yeah.
That's all they need to know. And for that reason, we, of course, as I said, we have learned a lot from the past mistakes and some of the missed opportunities. And we are partnering with the partners that have been operating in these spaces. I may not name them because I may omit one, and whoever I omit,
and
they'll come back, they'll come at me.
Yeah.
So we do have partners that we are working with. For example, let's say you talk of cocoa. Yeah. Today, producers of cocoa in Ghana have high quality chocolate that meets the standards of other high-end markets. Now, how did that actually happen? It took one of our partners to say, we can actually ensure that the exportation of cocoa, it's not in a raw form alone. Let's begin to build the capacity of the cocoa producers in Ghana to make sure that they're able to export their products outside. What does that involve? It's breaking down. If you go to a producer and you say there's something called a tariff, import duty. It's like, what are you talking about? How are you talking about? You need to reduce that to the level at which people will understand to say, yes, you do have the taxman, and the taxman would need to take a little bit of the money for this purpose and for that purpose, and this is how you calculate. Oh, okay, there's rules of origin. What is that? Nobody would understand the rules and the origin. It doesn't make sense to an ordinary person. So how do you go about that? We have modules and we have people go into the communities to train them to say, if you are buying this particular, or rather you intend to export this particular product, the content you use, this is how you configure in making the content. This is how you configure the product so that you can meet the market demands. Now, this is at the very simplified level. And that's why we talk about the concept of the product development itself and really making sure that the product meets the standards. So there are programs that would focus specifically on the product itself. There would be programs that would focus on the market itself, like I talked about the duties, I talked about the rules of origin, and then this product will be curated for these particular entities. There will be programs on supply chains in terms of how do you move supply chains and logistics. How do you move this product from point A to point B? The insurance, the trade finance. How do you make sure that your goods are insured? All of those, these are the programs that will have to be taken down. And again, we are having partners who are operating in this space, and they have a credible, they have the credibility in the sense of them having been doing this for the longest time. So what I'm saying here is that it will be oxymoronic to think that the Secretariat will be like God, all-knowing, omniscient, and the Secretariat will be everywhere, omnipotent. It can be. We need to work with other partners in different spaces, and then we leverage on each other's competencies. And in that way, we are able to make this worthwhile. And again, like the partner that I talked about, they're doing tremendous work, and we can see that indeed the standards are being met at the highest level.
And I'm happy you're talking about partners, because it's interesting and it will be interesting to know how you're stepping up with partnerships and collaboration to execute this, particularly as we get into the implementation phase. You said that you have a strategy that just began in this February. So from now going, you have implementation ahead of you. up until the next 5 years, a huge strategy that you have from the Secretariat, connecting with your partners. And definitely you would need to carry people along. You need to have the DFIs and all of that who would want to support you and all of that. How are you stepping up collaboration, and who are to be the likely partners and all
Sure.
of that?
You know, we have a strategy, and we call it 4Cs. An interesting strategy and or initiative. And what we're saying is that we need to ensure that in this journey, as we partner with several of different entities across the continent and beyond the continent, of course, those that are pro-Africa and pro-development, we need to deploy this 4C. The first C is we need to co-conceptualize. Co-conceptualize. We cannot anymore afford borrowed ideas from other parts of the world that may not find relevance and resonance with our life here in the continent and the structure of our markets. Now, we need to therefore co-conceptualize what exactly do we want to work on. If it's those five capacity areas that I mentioned, we have to conceptualize as to what initiatives we need. That's the first part. The second is we need to co-design with our partners. Of course, the AfCFTA will take lead because we know what is in the legal instruments, which were created, and let me bust this myth, the legal instruments which were created by Africans. I've heard many other things out there. I was one of them before I came to the Secretariat, so let me not blow my horn. But created by Africans, so we need to co-design. We know what is in there, we know what is developmental, and this is what we are pushing. That's why the co-design is important. And we have said this to our partners to say, we are seeing a lot of money being thrown down the drain because you cannot come into my house and somehow figure out all the rooms I have in my house. I'm sure I may be having some big room that you may not know of. And maybe if you need to really go into that room, let's talk.
Yeah.
That's where the whole concept of the co-designing comes in from. The third area is co-creation. The third C is co-creation. We create the initiatives, and of course, the fourth one is co-delivery. That's it. That's the model. And in that way, you are able to carry all of our ambitions. You are able to also benefit from the knowledge in the Secretariat on how to go about certain aspects of the agreement. You are able to leverage on our networks. And of course, we also are able to leverage on the knowledge of our partners, the networks of our partners, and we come up with something that is indeed very much impactful. And of course, there are things that I may not say because they're still in the kitchen now that we are working
Still
on.
being prepared.
Yes, and because you asked me who are the partners, there are partners who have fully understood what we are trying to do, and we have explained it to them. But let me put it in these terms. What we have said is that there are many initiatives out there by our partners, and they're touching on trade in several areas. Some of them is in corridors, and others are investment in this or that. And we are saying, let's make sure that we mainstream the AfCFTA, and also we mainstream these particular initiatives into the AfCFTA, vice versa.
Yeah.
Why? Because you may be at 100 when actually we are still at a 20. And we want to help you to make sure that your initiative can be worthwhile. And we are very proud that the partners are beginning to understand the message. It's going to be those 5 capacity areas. It's going to be the 4 Cs, but let's mainstream. And then in that way, we can actually do a very beautiful tango.
Resources. With the enormous work that's ahead of you and the mammoth activities that you have planned, and you've talked brilliantly, eloquently about quite a number of them that you have planned, and it sounds very exciting that the next 5 years we're expecting so much from the Secretariat and the African continent and African public. I'm sure can't wait to begin to see what the next 5 years will look like. And maybe when we are ending, that's one of the things I would ask you, what you envision the next 5 years to be. But with all of that, you definitely need resources. To what extent are you capacitated as a secretariat to do this and achieve this?
Let me say this, that there is no dearth of resources. The resources are there. The question, and that's why I talk about the solution, the question is, do we have bankable projects that our partners, our African investors can invest in? That's the question. It's not, we have the pension funds in the continent, and the question is, where have they put their money? Their money is outside of the continent. Why? Why is that the case? And unless we do have bankable projects, such monies are not going to be invested into this continent. We think that we have a case. We think the AfCFTA presents a case for all the pension funds and the insurance funds that we have in the continent to be invested here. And let's remember that indeed we do have development partners in the form of intergovernmental organizations or governments out there. But the real investments, it's in the investment market. How can we ensure that we harness and harvest those investments? We do have this opportunity through the AfCFTA. And in this sense, therefore, what I'm saying is that we certainly, as a secretariat, as an institution, that's why the last pillar of our strategy is about strengthened secretariat. We need human resources, and of course, to be able to cover the vast continent that we have, you would need a number of people, particularly, and this is how I characterize this, to say it is very easy for us as a secretariat, stretched as we are, to convene member states and run a process of negotiations. Now, the negotiations are done. It's like a musical chairs. The music has stopped. The question is, if I have 2-3 people, can these people be able to reach out to all the 50 countries? How many times can they do that in a year? So we need human resources. I want to attest to that. But we are building a case as to why there would need to be an appreciable levels when it comes to the staff complement of the secretariat. So that is needed. Certainly the financial resources will be critical. Part of this, we are not begging, and I want to make this very, very clear.
That's important. Very important.
The secretariat is not. We are not begging. Instead, what we are saying to our partners, and I want to give the audience this particular picture, and it's very important at least to convey this. And I have asked, and I used to ask this also when I was in the academy. I used to ask my students very interesting questions along the lines that, how many indigenous African countries can be classified as multinational companies in the continent, indigenous? Of course, you can refer to some of the big traders, I don't want to mention by name here, in West Africa, but I'm sure it will be very difficult for you to go, let's say, beyond 20. But at the same time, if you ask yourself to say, how many other multinational companies we have operating in an African market, international companies, and serving the African market, not just doing trade to export goods outside of the market. And we can go into that. And of course, they'll begin to mention a number of big companies out there. So I say, the AfCFTA and these companies, and I know there are a lot of theories around these big companies, and the pros and cons, and a whole theory out there about some of them are very extractive in their operations. If they're able to create jobs into the continent, value adding and decent jobs in the continent, perhaps this is why we are seeing a country like China having been able to have amassed these technologies and transfer of knowledge to a point where now it is able to build its own companies that can compete at the global stage. So all that I'm saying, therefore, is that when, therefore, we talk to our partners using this analogy, is to say that what we are saying is that the strength of the secretariat is equivalent to the profitability of the different entities we have here in the continent. That's where the question of not begging is coming from. The strength of these companies, the more our small businesses are going to be made stronger, because they're part of the value chain. These companies are not just here in the continent. From services to goods, they're part of the value chain. So the AfCFTA, therefore, primarily is for the 98% of our small and medium enterprises. That's the design of the agreement. We also, of course, have the bigger companies that can leverage on this as long as they are registered and they're operating here in the continent. Therefore, the idea of how we partner with partners within the continent, partners from outside of the continent, all of that is set within this framework that we are designing, and therefore we are making an investment case into the continent. When people say there is a deficit in infrastructure of so much, of course, $110 billion annually, it's a staggering number, but we are saying that if you have a regulatory framework, if you have stability, the AfCFTA would contribute in reducing wars across, silencing the guns, as we say in the African Union, in the continent. There will be no need for somebody to pick up a gun if they're able to derive livelihood from cross-border trade. Everybody will try to ring-fence that to make sure that we don't have that. That's why even the whole Bretton Woods institutions, when they were created, they were a panacea to the World War III that would have actually broken out. So it's the same thing. And therefore, we are creating the enabling environment, as the Secretary General always says, Excellency. The enabling environment has been created. The legal instruments have been set out. Now, of course, we need to invest in making sure that they get and derive meaning, and of course, the impact being derived here by the most indigent of our people.
Director, there's a very sensitive subject that once I have you, and your role is very key, so I will take the opportunity to ask you. The fact that we have some folks who wonder why we have to partner with folks or partners beyond Africa. Is a subject that has become quite sensitive. So as we talk about partners and all of that, the fact that this is an African agreement for Africans, the other school of thought is that you can't just have Africans trading alone. There should be a global side of the whole trading. You cannot just hope that you are trading in Africa and so you cut out from the rest of the world. The other school of thought is also that it's an African product, and so if the agreement is an African agreement, let resources, let partnerships and everything just be within Africa. Is there the need to partner beyond the continent? Is there the need to look beyond the continent for partnership and support in all forms in making sure that this agreement delivers the best for the people of the continent? Give me your take on this.
My unit of consideration is that African. We can indeed have doctrinal discussions. We can have we can exchange theories and the impact of this theory and that theory. And others will say, this is a neoclassical approach. Others. So there are many ways in which there can be a description of what we are seeking to do. My issue really is the life of an African being changed for the better. Our intellectual property being stolen. Are we putting in place mechanisms to make sure that our traditional knowledge, our folklore, our genetic resources, does the AfCFTA provide the basis on which these three elements, as an example, and I'm just giving you an example, does it put in place a mechanism through which we can beneficiate from the knowledge of our ancestors that have been passed down to us, and others in the world, the rest of the world, may not have an interest in protecting? 2000s or early 2000s, I was able to watch the Nollywood movies at that time. You look at the hunger for Africa to get integrated, and now it's even higher. I mean, you look at the gaming industry, the young people, you can play your game with somebody in Nigeria while seated at your sofa in Lesotho. So there's this whole new economy that somehow it is evading some of us who are a little older, it is evading all of us, but it's a totally different economy that is running parallel to this. And of course, we are proud at the Secretariat that our member states have been able to come up with the protocol on digital trade to really oil this new fourth industrial revolution economy.
Tell me about the sports you do, because I see your stature. Have you been into sports?
Yes, I've been into sports, and I know that my colleagues I used to run around with will laugh at this, but of course the sports killed my knees. So
we did.
Yeah.
Which sports though? Which sports?
Had we had integration in the healthcare services,
you would have taken advantage.
We would have taken advantage of that, and would have had better services at the time. But I did. I was very active in sports. I played football, of course. I think it's a few people in Africa
who don't do that.
I did basketball as well.
Oh, good.
So I did have fun growing up. But then with these knees, I have to take some things that are a little bit easy for me.
Yeah.
A few strokes here and there.
Strokes
hit the
means
ball,
what?
Meaning,
tennis or what?
Oh, no, I can go to
golf.
Just a beginner. I just hit one, golf, take the club and hit one ball there, and then I can go and sleep.
That's the easiest one, is it?
Or maybe not. I'm not so sure that it is that easy. I need to take you there.
It's not like rugby, though.
Oh, of course. Oh, no. Mustache, no, I can't do it.
You can't go there.
I'm a soft guy.
No, but that's interesting. And Director, we wish you well. Then your team at the Secretariat. You may want to say something to your team at the Secretariat that you work so hard with. You want to say something?
No, thank you very much. And again, like I said, I'm very glad to be here. These are the people that I spent most of my time with. Their family to me, and I can't help it but from the bottom of my heart to thank them for the work that they do. It's great work. We are in the kitchen, the work we do is programming, it's coordination, so our faces may not be out in the public, but these are the very people who really do a lot of work, and I personally owe them a lot of gratitude for what they do. So all of you colleagues, you are the engine, so just know that you are the engine. Great. And I'm great that we have such a great team that you are.
Great, and the continent is proud of you, Director, and your team, and for the work that you are doing for this great continent, particularly for the future that we are all envisioning and the generations that are coming. What you are building for us as a continent, we appreciate you, and we'll continue to pray for great health, so that your knees get fixed and every part of your body is in great health, and all of that. We hope to bring you back, because there are other topics that we definitely would need you in. We'll also be coming to your department and talk to some of the great people who are working with you, particularly the area of women and youth and all of that. We'll get to some of your colleagues and talk to them. But once again, we appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing for the continent, and I believe that posterity and future generations will definitely appreciate the work you have done together with the leadership of the Secretariat. Appreciate you, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll be here to showcase another kaftan.
Thank
you very much.